Hey, this is Troy from Planet 76. We've got some really good Sixers-focused content coming your way today. Make sure you subscribe to the pod so you can be in the know when we release new content. Enjoy the show.
Welcome, everyone, to Planet 76 podcast. I'm your host, Michael. Troy, rocking the Iverson hat. I just noticed that.
Yes, sir.
Troy and I were just chatting for a few minutes off camera. Just noticed that. I like that a lot. We are in the midst of perhaps the greatest free agency for the Sixers in the past decade. We have a lot to talk about, so make sure you guys subscribe to the podcast as usual. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Facebook. We're on Facebook. Check us out.
Yes, sir.
Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Not going to get into that. You know the drill. Let's just get right into the conversation. We're actually going to be splitting our two free agency / offseason episodes. We're going to do a whole episode on Paul George. So this episode will not contain mostly any Paul George discussion. We're going to do an entire episode on Paul George. We're going to go over everything. So if you're interested in some Paul George talk, if you're interested in our thoughts on Paul George, if you're interested in literally everything Paul George, stick around because we're going to have another episode coming out soon with Paul George. Yep. This episode is going to be not Paul George as much. Going to be some Paul George, but not nearly as much. Nonetheless, extremely productive offseason for the Sixers so far. I would even go out on a limb, not even on a limb, but I would go out and say they've had the best offseason of any team in the NBA. They've hit it out of the park. Daryl Morey's hit it out of the park, and we'll get into more of that in both episodes. So for right now, Troy, I'm going to kick it to you. We talked about the draft last episode. We won't get into that too much. Again, Adam, I don't know how you pronounce his name, Bona, and Jared McCain highlight the Sixers draft picks. They also were able to acquire Justin Edwards, who was apparently a top 10 pick a couple years ago, projected top 10 pick. So we'll have to see how that plays out on a two-way deal. Actually, Sixers Summer League, real quick, is starting tonight. They actually just beat the brakes off of the Oklahoma City.
Ricky Council went off.
Dude, Ricky Council. If we're looking for the fifth Sixers starter, I don't think we have to look much further than Ricky Council because this dude is good. This dude is really good, man. He's really good. I know it's Summer League. It's easy to overlook and just say, oh, it's Summer League. Who cares? But he was cooking these dudes. He was cooking. He had 17 points in the fourth quarter of tonight's game. Single-handedly beat the brakes off the Thunder's Summer League team. So, won't get too much into the Summer League. But, Troy, I'm going to kick it to you. Where are we starting off tonight?
All right. Episode 154. Sixers have made a ton of moves, even the last few episodes leading up to tonight, recording the 8th of July. Lots transpired. We knew a lot was going to happen. We knew it was going to happen quickly. So this is actually, Michael and I, our first time, really chatting about all that the Sixers have done. So I'm excited to be able to do that with you and get into it. But I think where I want to start is just kind of, if we can remember all the events in order, because I kind of know my process of how I took in all these deals that the Sixers made and the order that they did them in and kind of watching it all unfold. I just want to kind of get that from your perspective. Who the Sixers brought in and then who they ended up saying goodbye to as well. We'll get into that. So you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think the first move the Sixers made quickly at 6 o'clock on the 30th was Andre Drummond.
That sounds
right. And then quickly after that was Eric Gordon. So why don't you hit on those two and then we'll go a little deeper.
Awesome.
Thoughts there, or maybe like even if you remember back 10 days ago, 9 days ago, kind of your thought process as that unfolded.
So when I saw they had Andre Drummond and I saw the contract, I thought, well, 2 years, $10 million. I thought, wait a minute. This means the Sixers are, one, not going to get many more guys, especially because we were all pretty much under the assumption that they were going to get Paul George. So at that point, we were thinking, well, if they get Drummond and they get George, they can't get anybody else because that's their entire cap space for the offseason. Obviously, knowing what we know now, things didn't end up that way. But nonetheless, I was ecstatic. And I feel like if you weren't ecstatic or at the very least happy about it, relieved, you're not a Sixers fan. You're actually kind of crazy, and you should be excommunicated from this fan base. No, but Drummond, the having that kind of, and we saw it before. He's been here. Like, duh, welcome back, Andre Drummond. It's not like it's his first time here. We've seen what he brings, not only as Embiid insurance, as a fantastic, amazing backup to Embiid, but also the fact that he's just a really good player. Like, the fact that he's just really good, and he provides so much. And, really on both ends of the floor. Like, amazing rebounder, we know this. Amazing lob threat. Just a big body on the offensive glass. And defensively, he's not a great defender, but he's a good rim protector. He can block shots. Still also a very good defensive rebounder, too. For his career, historically, he's one of the best rebounders ever. And obviously, he's not the same player he was when he was peak rebounding, but he's still a really good rebounder. He still has a lot of that. And it's just such a luxury to have that on your team. A guy where you can be like, you know what? Joel Embiid's our starting center, and our backup center, he's really good. And that's not something that you could have been saying for the Sixers really since the last time they had Andre Drummond. It's really insane. Correct. And it's great that he's back. I have nothing bad to say about it, really. There's nothing you... And I'll kick it right back to you about your thoughts on that. I don't think there's anything bad to say about it. Even trying to be as objective as I can, I don't think there's anything that you could possibly say is bad. The contract is great. I think I saw he has a player option on year 2, or maybe that was somebody else. That might have been...
Kelly.
That might have been Oubre, yeah. But just awesome. Like,
it is awesome.
Really awesome.
2-year, $10 million for Andre Drummond, who, as you just said, I mean, that's the automatic thing that comes to mind since his 49 games played here, a couple seasons ago, is that in Joel Embiid's time, he was my favorite backup center, easily. And and you think about what Andre Drummond could have done for the Sixers team this past season, where Embiid missed significant time, and then you put in Andre Drummond in the starting lineup, who's going to get doubles like every night, like literally every night. And that just makes a big difference. So it because we know Embiid's going to miss time. We just know he is. He's going to miss games. And so, he's going to allow some stability, and maybe you don't drop his fall in the standings, like we did this past season because of a guy like Andre Drummond being there. Another one that you can't really complain about is Eric Gordon and his vet minimum deal. I thought that I knew Eric Gordon was good. I knew he'd been in the NBA a long time. He's 35 years old. But as I kind of dug a little deeper on some numbers, I'm going to admit I did not know this. Throughout his NBA tenure since 2008, he has averaged double figures in scoring every single season. I knew he did a lot of seasons, but I never put two and two together. He did it every single season. Now, some seasons it was 11. A couple it was like 20, 18. But the dude can score, and he can still provide some offense for this Sixers team. He averaged 11 points this past season in 28 minutes, and so I think bringing in both these veterans is a big deal. What is your, to me, like, now again, this is like a box score thing, but like to me, when I kind of read up on some numbers of Eric Gordon, like I got more excited about that signing. I don't know what boat you're in with Eric Gordon, but go ahead.
Yeah, I kind of share that same sentiment. I knew Eric Gordon could light it up, but I didn't know that he could score the way he did and does, and even like you mentioned, at the ripe age of 35, still does. And I knew he was a good shooter, but I didn't know he was that good. I mean, he's basically been 40% his whole career. Let me just double check that, actually. But he's also a guy who can put the ball on the floor and attack the basket, attack off of closeouts, and he does that really well. I didn't really know how well he did that until I watched some of his game more. Like Eric Gordon, everybody knows Eric Gordon, but until you actually watch him, you don't actually know that some of the stuff he can do is really crafty. And just an edit on my point here, he's He's not quite been 40% for his career. He's been 37. He's had plenty, though, seasons of shooting 40% on really high volume. With the Rockets specifically, he never quite shot 40, but he did end up getting up to 37, 36%, which at the time was probably a little above league average. Right now, that's league average, but still 9 attempts a game in 2017 is crazy. And that would have been awesome now simply because of the volume. But even in 21, I mean, 41% from three on 5 attempts a game. Last year for the Clippers, 42% from three on 5 attempts a game. This past year, 38% from three on 6 attempts per game. This is what you need, and the Sixers have that. I like to draw comparisons to JJ Redick and Seth Curry, not because they, were so good for the Sixers, but because of what they did for the Sixers, because of their play style. And I feel like Eric Gordon could not become the next Seth Curry or JJ Redick, but I feel like he could provide some of what they did at the scale that they did. Obviously not for a super long period of time. Like, you're not going to expect Eric Gordon to be JJ Redick for an entire season, but there are times where you can look at Eric Gordon and be like, he's going absolutely crazy from three. And this is the kind of player that the Sixers need and should want, and they do, because they just signed him. They obviously want him. And on a vet minimum, I can't sit here and tell you that he's worth a whole lot more than a vet minimum. I'm not going to sit here and be like, he's worth $5 million a year. But at the same time, this is somebody who's still really good. He's 35. You don't expect a guy who's 35 to still be lighting it up the way he does at the volume at which he's doing it. And plus, he's also a pretty decent defender. Like, not all defense by any means, not amazing, but he's not bad. He's not bad. Yeah. Pesky on the ball, quick hands. That's cool. If he can be a neutral defender, that's cool. That's more than, unfortunately...
That's a win,
yeah. That's more than, unfortunately, JJ Redick could ever say for himself, Seth Curry could ever say for himself. That's good. That's right. That's an added bonus. I'm cool with that. Very, very big fan, basically. I just ranted for like 3 minutes. But basically, what I'm trying to say is, big fan of this signing. Really no downsides outside of his age, perhaps, and you don't know how his scoring is going to be impacted. You don't know what his points per game are going to look like. But I can't imagine they take much of a dip, because he's going to be playing a very similar role to that of when he was in Phoenix and Los Angeles. So I'm not too worried about that.
Yeah, you saying that, brought a couple questions to my mind. And one, I do wonder if that streak of double-digit scoring is going to stay here in Philly. He's down around 11 this past season in Phoenix, and I think this year before that. So we'll see if that continues as his career comes on over to Philadelphia. But the point that you just raised with, you think back to guys who were known for their shooting that we've had here, JJ Redick, Seth Curry, and there's no doubt in my mind that I'm more comfortable with Eric Gordon as a defender than I am with those two guys. And you look at the role that they played that was significant here, and so I think that kind of helped me even just to put things in perspective with, how capable he is. In comparison to some of those guys that we've had and seen in years past on the defensive end. And then in the middle of the night, there were some more things that happened. I think Kelly Oubre was first, maybe 1:30 Eastern time, and then Paul George was 3:30. Now, like you mentioned, Paul George, was kind of heading that way. It was, I think we talked about it right before free agency started. It was a roller coaster. It was early on, way back, it was Sixers. He's coming to Philadelphia, no doubt. Then it was nope, Sixers are out on the Paul George sweepstakes. And then, I don't know, maybe a week out of free agency opening up, it started to trend back that direction that he was coming. And then the day of, it was a given. Everybody knew it. A lot of teams kind of rolled themselves out with deals that they made, and it was the logical place for him to come, and he did. Again, 3:30 in the morning on the East Coast was that news. But perhaps the biggest surprise, the reason I kind of worded it that way, perhaps the biggest surprise, though, wasn't Paul George. It ended up being Kelly Oubre with the deal that he signed. There were a lot of concerns. He was on a minimum deal. He averaged 15 points a game for the Sixers. Fan favorite. He was great. And then given the money and given the circumstances, given the fact that, they're going to give Paul George the max, like, how are we going to get this guy back? And we did. I mean, we did. You mentioned a player option, 2-year deal, $16 million. Another one I think Sixers fans are happy to say that we're not mad with that one. Are you mad with that one?
No, in fact, I'm quite the opposite. I am shocked.
Yeah.
I was kind of beside myself. I was up. I was awake at 1:30 a.m. I was not awake at 3:30 a.m. when this Paul George news dropped.
Exactly.
But I was up. I was up and awake at 1:30 a.m. I saw the notification. I said, Kelly Oubre, $8 million a year? $8 million a year. For one, like you just mentioned, for the player he is, really good.
Right.
But for the year he just had, on the contract that he did it on, how is he not offered more than $8 million a year? And the Sixers used the mid-league exception on him. They didn't even give him a standard NBA contract. They gave him a mid-league exception that they had just sitting there, and they just gave it to him. He's $8 million a year. I wouldn't be surprised if in a few months we find out that teams offered him $15, $20 million. And you and I talked about this. I imagine we did.
Oh, we did.
Kelly Oubre is at this point is a guy who could be making 15, 16, 17 million.
He chose Philadelphia.
This guy is awesome.
Yeah.
This guy is, not only is he an amazing player, but he's like, you know what? I mean, I don't even know what his mindset was. I can only guess, but I have to imagine it's something along the lines of, you know what? Philly was great. Everybody loved me. Everybody embraced me. And I could go somewhere and get a bag, or I could go win a ring in Philly. What would I choose at this point in my career?
Yep.
I kind of want the ring. Let me go to Philly. Again, I don't know Kelly Oubre. Never met him. Never spoke a word to him. But I can only imagine that was something of his mentality with this contract. I don't know when the Sixers reached out to him about it. I don't know when he accepted it. All we know is the news broke at 1:30 a.m. On July 1st, 2nd, 1st?
Right. Yep, 1st.
Yes. And the rest is history. So, huge fan. And obviously we'll talk more about Kelly, everybody, as the offseason goes on, / as we get into preseason, training camp, all that stuff. Kelly Oubre, awesome. I'm shocked that he signed for $8 million a year and with a player option. I was just really bewildered that he accepted that money when he could have easily gotten 15, 16 million from somewhere else.
Right, exactly. And the thing to me that for some reason, I mean, again, you look at some of the other contracts that guys sign, and the thing that put that contract in perspective for me to say, wow, we got Kelly Oubre on a really great deal was, well, there's a couple, but like, and I would have welcomed Kentavious Caldwell-Pope here, but he signed a 3-year, $66 million deal. That's $22 million a year, and Kelly's $8 million a year. Is KCP $14 million a year better than Kelly Oubre Jr.? I don't think so.
No.
Right? I mean,
no.
That's and then perhaps the stunner that I don't think is getting talked about enough is Isaiah Hartenstein's deal. Oh my goodness. I gotta look up the official contract because I don't want to mess it up. But it was
3 years, $80 million.
It was 80. Yeah, it was 80. That's insane for a guy that plays against Joel Embiid and gets 4 fouls in 9 minutes. Like that's insane.
It's insane, and I am happy though because they pry him away from the Knicks. And from what we saw from Hartenstein in the playoffs firsthand, I'm glad, and I think that makes them worse.
He caused some issues for sure.
I think that makes the Knicks worse because you have to fill the void of what he brought. Now I was not an all-star, but you can't expect Mitchell Robinson to do what he does. You can't expect.
Yeah.
Who's their other guy they have? Jericho Sims. You can't expect him to do what Hartenstein does. So I'm very glad, and you know what? Give him that money. Maybe he deserves it. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. That's not my
bag.
Yeah, that's not my place to say. But I'm glad he's out of the East.
And I feel like we keep kind of saying it, but like as Sixers fans, again, we knew coming into free agency there was a lot of moves to be made. There was a lot of guys to come onto this team, and they weren't going to get everybody back. And they do get a guy, Kelly Oubre, back who was at the top of our list. Aside from DeAnthony Melton, I know. I'm sorry for you. Signed with Golden State.
We'll talk about him in a minute here.
But we'll get to the guys that aren't here and we know aren't going to be back. But I think it's cool because we can sit here and say Andre Drummond, great deal.
Yep.
Eric Gordon, great deal. Kelly Oubre, great deal. And then Caleb Martin.
Man, coming in hot
Martin
Saturday
is a Sixer.
morning.
Right. There were some rumors, but it was like, all right, I don't know about that. I mean, how much money do we have? And he signs a 4-year deal, $32 million. So per year, the same amount as Kelly Oubre's getting. Kind of interesting note there. But then it comes out that he turned down a $65 million contract from the Heat.
5 years,
that was
65.
5 years? Yeah, talk about that. Go. Talk about it. How? Why?
I don't know. He missed. He turned down an extra $30 million for what reason? I don't know. But at the end,
I'll enjoy the Philly weather instead of Miami.
Yeah, I'll try and get
man.
into it in a few seconds here as best I can. All I know is I don't know why he did it, but I'm glad he did because Caleb Martin is awesome. And he addresses some of the needs the Sixers had even after signing Paul George. He addresses some rebounding. He addresses some defense. He's not particularly awesome at those things, but he's good and he helps the Sixers in those categories. I don't know. I can only imagine it's for a similar reason Kelly Oubre did it. Maybe he was like, you know what, the Heat, Jimmy's old. We don't really have a ton of
the wrong direction.
We don't really have a ton of promise. Hey, Philly is interested in me. Let me go give them a chance. But could Paul George have something to do with it? Maybe he was like, you know what? Whoa, hold on. Paul George is going there. Hey, I kind of want to play with Paul George and Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey.
Yeah.
Maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know, because I feel like in years past, the Sixers wouldn't have gotten a guy like Caleb Martin. I feel like in years past, guys like Caleb Martin would just glance over the Sixers and be like, they're good, but I'm going to go somewhere else. Or I'm going to stay with the Heat. I don't know. I feel like maybe Paul George has something to do with it.
Yeah, and it's nice to be the team this year because, again, the biggest need we had so many needs. Yeah. And it's nice to be the team on the end of saying, well, we didn't overpay for that guy. We didn't overpay for that guy.
They didn't overpay for anybody. They underpaid for everybody.
Right.
They underpaid.
That's a different feeling for us.
For every single player they got. Every single player they got in free agency could have made at least $5 million more than they did. Insane.
Right.
And you know who
it is insane.
And you know who we have to thank for this?
Who?
There's one man.
Tell him.
So you say it. Say it. I don't have to say it.
Mr. Daryl Morey.
There's one man we have to thank for this.
One man to thank.
And
he's playing chess.
Always, man. And it's so funny. Every offseason, everybody expects the Sixers to do this, do that, do this. This is the first offseason since Daryl Morey got here 4 years ago. 4 years ago in 2020, where he's had actual flexibility, trade pieces, and he didn't, wait a minute, hold on, not even trade pieces, because he didn't trade anything to get these players. He didn't make a single trade to get any of these guys. Well, technically he traded Buddy Hield, but that doesn't count. He didn't make a single trade. All of this was made possible because the Sixers had the most cap space in the entire league. Daryl Morey did wondrous things with this cap space and has transformed this team into quite possibly the best team in the Joel Embiid era. And it's amazing the things you can see him do when he has the proper tools to do those things. In years past, the Sixers did not have this cap space. They didn't have $60+ million in cap space to go after the biggest free agent available. That's never happened. They've never actually had the means to do that, except, I guess, LeBron in 2018. If that even counts, I don't know, because was he ever going to come here? We'll never know. And Daryl Morey wasn't even here. The Sixers have with Daryl Morey have not had the means to do anything really significant in the offseason except, I mean, they traded for James Harden. That was during the season. But whatever, doesn't count. Doesn't matter.
It's got a different feel to it.
It's just so different. When you are a dude with Daryl Morey's intelligence, IQ, decision making, knowledge of the game, of the front office, you get the result is literally what we are seeing right now. Like, this is what you get when all of the proper things align, and Daryl Morey can do it's his job. Like, he's doing his job right now. He couldn't do his job properly because the Sixers were so handicapped from before. They had so much money on the books for players. They had no trade assets. They had no chance of signing big-name free agents. But now that they have all those things and all the stars have aligned, Daryl Morey got it done. And this is what he does. And people are finally seeing that. It's on full display. And people are finally seeing what can happen when all the things that need to happen are going and moving.
Dude, I know we said that we were going to do 2 episodes, but I think maybe we should just take that, 4-minute Daryl Morey thing and just make it its own.
You can if you want to. I don't care.
Daryl needs an episode.
Daryl Morey mini episode.
No, it's funny. But, I mean, you're right. I mean, he's done it. And we didn't know how he was going to do it. We didn't know what he was going to do. We didn't know what the plan was. We didn't, is it depth? Is it a star? Is it high-quality depth and a star? And you can make the argument that he did both.
I was gonna let me just 1 or 2 minutes of this. A big, and we talked about it. A big, what's the word I'm looking for? What's the opposite of a selling point? Anti-selling point.
Yeah.
For signing Paul George was that the Sixers would be handicapped in filling out the roster after they signed him. Paul George was going to be $50 million. They only had $60 million. What are they going to do? That was honestly one of the only reasons why I was so against Paul George coming here. But Daryl Morey just pulls these he's just performing magic tricks.
Yeah. Signing
Drummond for a bargain, Eric Gordon on a vet minimum, Kelly Oubre for super insane, Caleb Martin. I still don't even know how they have enough money for the I don't get it. I don't get it. But like you said, he did both. The Sixers got the best player available. They got some really high quality depth.
Yeah.
Not the highest
didn't overpay
quality.
For that depth.
Right. Sure, they missed out on.
I mean,
huh?
So imagine if. Imagine if the Sixers on Sunday the 30th at 6:00 were not sure they were going to get Paul George, but then it's KCP's available on 3 years, 60. Even if it's a little less, 3 years, $55 million. Imagine they jump the gun and they do that.
Yeah.
And then they're screwed with the Paul George sweepstakes. You might be able to get some of that other depth, but you're not bringing in Paul George. And so I think they knew what they could get. The stars aligned and they got it done.
And the thing about Daryl Morey is he does not. He waits so patiently for what he wants to accomplish, and it's mostly always the thing that the Sixers should do. He waits so patiently. He does not commit too much. He does not rush into something as an alternative. He waits for exactly what he wants, and then he gets that thing. For example, James Harden. He waited 1.5 years to get James Harden. He did not fold for Tyrese Halliburton. He did not fold for anybody else. You want to argue he should have traded for somebody else? It doesn't matter. What the Sixers did in that time is what they should have done. Daryl Morey waited 1.5 years to get James Harden. And when James Harden was available, he was ready. He pounced. He was ready.
Yep.
Paul George. This was a 3-month thing. Daryl Morey waited out the market. Did not settle, like you mentioned, for somebody else, for KCP. They waited for Paul George. They met with Paul George. Boom. They pounced. Paul George is a Sixer. That is something I don't think can be understated.
Yeah.
I'm done now.
Gotta love it.
I'm done.
Gotta love it. All right, well, hold on. We gotta wrap this one up. So let's I think what we're gonna do with the Paul George episode, which is coming next, which will be live a few days after this one, will be Paul George and then some other needs that we see, because there's still some pieces to be added. But as we wrap up this episode 154, why don't we just discuss a little bit about the Sixers that maybe were here for years or a few months or whatever the case, and are saying goodbye.
A tribute.
So Tobias Harris off to Detroit. You're gonna help me fill in the blanks for this. And D'Anthony Melton off to Golden State.
Buddy Hield off to Golden State.
Oh, that's right. They got both of them. Buddy Hield off to Golden State.
Let's pause real quick on Golden State. Buddy Hield and D'Anthony Melton literally add like 10 wins to that team. They're going to be insanely good.
Yeah. Where'd Mo Bamba go?
Clippers. It's so weird. The Clippers and Sixers essentially poached each other's players.
Yeah, that's right.
Nick Batum go back to the Clippers. Mo Bamba to the Clippers. Paul George to the Sixers.
Campaign nowhere
yet. Surprise.
Lowry nowhere yet.
Surprise vet minimum candidate. We will have to. We will have to see.
He likes Philly.
Hey man, Kyle Lowry's from here. That's it. Yeah. Batum went to L.A.
Yeah.
That's it.
I saw they wanted to be back home, or family wanted to be on the West Coast.
Apparently he has good relationships with Tyronn Lue in the front office, so I'm okay with that. Respect, absolutely. Yep. If you are getting really, like, you can't blame anybody that left the Sixers. Like, there's no bad blood, there's no ill will towards anybody. Like, Batum wanted to go home, he has a good relationship with the team, he wants to play there. Okay, cool. D'Anthony Melton got a bag, the Sixers couldn't have offered him that money. Respect. He deserves it. He's a great player. I'll buy his Golden State jersey. Gladly. Buddy Hield. Maybe they could have re-signed him because he's only like $8 million. But you know what? Whatever. It's cool. He played his role.
Yeah.
I was happy with Buddy Hield. I'm glad the Sixers got him. That doesn't change. Mo Bamba, whatever. He's good. Paul Reed. I was just thinking that.
Paul Reed.
I think I can speak for all Sixers fans when I say we're upset about that. Of course we are, but at the same time, the Sixers drafted again. I don't know how to pronounce his name correctly. Adam Bona, whatever.
Yeah.
They drafted him. They signed Drummond. Unfortunately,
the writing was on the wall with the Drummond sign.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you don't really have much need for Paul Reed there. He's not going to play much, if at all. Again, with Drummond, like you mentioned. Maybe they could have traded him for something, but at the end of the day, let him go and do his thing. I think a team is going to pick him up very quickly, and he's going to find a role very quickly. He's good. I've made posts about Paul Reed. We've talked about him. Paul Reed's a very good NBA player. He has flaws, of course. He's not the perfect player, but I think from a modern-day big man perspective, I think he is very unique. I think his skill set's very unique. I think he can do a lot for a team. I think he's going to get picked up, and I think he's going to find a role. And he's still young enough to where he can develop a lot of his game on both ends of the floor. So, again, nothing wrong with that. Like, good luck to Paul Reed. Very fun player, very unique player. Like,
so easy to root for him.
Right? It's so easy. He just can play every time.
Yes. Yeah, so wherever he goes, as long as it's not Boston or New York, we'll be rooting for him big time. I think, like, and it, again, certainly no ill will or ill feelings or anything like that. I think, a part of me obviously hopes or wishes that, because he was given that shot at the backup center, and it just didn't really pan out here. I think his role, at his best was coming in as a spark plug, when Embiid's in the lineup, and he's going to find a role somewhere, and he's going to do great. Know it. And so, but Andre Drummond, we're happy about that, and it makes sense. I'd rather see Paul Reed go somewhere and play versus sit on the bench here in Philly, where his time ran its course, and it's time to go, and he's going to do great. So, all right. that is episode 154. A lot of good stuff, a lot of stuff we're excited about. Be sure to check out the next episode where we go deep dive on Paul George, get Michael's thoughts on all things Paul George, and even our thoughts on what the Sixers can do, what Daryl Morey can do with what he's got left, which isn't a whole lot, but we've seen him make a lot out of nothing. So we'll see what he can do. This is episode 154. We'll see you next time on Planet 76. You just listened to an episode of the Planet 76 podcast. Hey, we appreciate you joining us for this episode. Whatever platform you're on, why don't you hit that subscribe button for us, and we'll see you next time.